Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with Exemplify Health Center, your Wellness Way affiliate right here in Yorkville, Illinois. Happy Monday, everybody. Thank you, as always, for joining us on this Monday evening. I realize that a lot of you have a ton of stuff to do. If you're watching right now or if you're watching on replay, thank you very much for doing that. If you are watching, make sure that you say hello. Also, guys, please let me know where you're watching from. That's one of my simple pleasures of life is seeing where you guys watch from. And if also you are watching on replay, just go ahead and type in replay as well and let me know that you're catching this, not live, but on the back side of it, all right? Now, guys, I'm going to talk about fertility, and this is obviously a topic that is going to require a little bit more than just doing one live for 30 or 40 minutes. So I'm probably going to talk about it in three different parts. Talk about the idea of fertility. Today I'm going to talk about a lot of ideas and also talk about IVF and fertility treatments and why there's, people have such a struggle with it. But I'll talk about fertility from a female aspect and also talk about it fertility when it comes to a male aspect, because actually both of them can be the contributors to suffering with infertility, okay? Now, let me also preface by saying this. If you are currently going through some fertility struggles, I just want to say that I know that it just breaks your heart to have to suffer through this. So I want you guys to understand is, no, my wife and I, we haven't gone through fertility issues, but we have helped people who have had fertility issues. Just understand, I know that the pain, I know the suffering, I know the anguish that you guys, are going through. I want you guys to understand that I do understand. And I also want you to know that this can also be a very emotionally charged, issue that is going on. So as we go through this, maybe some of the things that I say may be deemed insensitive, but I also want you to know to be able to see it from how I see it. A lot of times too, I will tell people, I say, hey, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that I can help you. The bad news is that I'm going to help you, but you're going to have to also help yourself, which also means that you're going to have to change some things that got you sick in the first place, which is impossible for you to ever get better if you always think that everything is just genetic. Because genes are, when the doctor says it's just genetic, the terrible thing that happens with that is that it takes away all hope, and it also will tend to make you very lazy if you think that things are just all genetic, because there's no incentive to change. If he says no matter what you do, nothing is going to change. And so, that's why I tell people, the good news is it's all up to you, and the bad news is it's all up to you. It just depends on how you want to look at it. So as we go through this, then I may say some things that may offend people, but just remember this, is that change never happens unless you first and foremost are offended. I want you guys just to think about that. Change doesn't happen unless you're first and foremost offended. No one ever makes changes sitting in the realm of comfortability. And speaking of which, as we wait for people to come on, this is actually not all of them, but a group of gentlemen that just finished up our Man Up Challenge. We did some things, guys, for 4 weeks. We took a group of men, about 20 men, and we actually put them on we would call it a no sugar diet. And we had them actually start off by fasting for 3 days. There's a reason why we do this with men and not with women. So fasting for 3 days, no sugar diet. We took them through 4 weeks of high intensity, short duration workouts. A couple of them were absolutely brutal in order to get their mind and get their mindset to become more resilient. When this picture is actually from when we went to Urban Ops, and we actually did a shooting course. It was really cool. We did some shooting training, self-defense training, and then we actually did shooting under stress, which was just absolutely awesome. But one of my passions is helping men reclaim that with which society and the food industry tries to destroy, which is a man's manlyhood, the very thing that makes a man a man. And just remember is that men and women are different. We didn't say that they're better, But anytime that you try to tell a woman they can do exactly what a man can, and you tell a man that they should be able to do exactly what a woman can, is you are telling them that their hormones based on their sex doesn't matter, okay? So I always, for the longest time, I'm like, man, I'm not very nurturing, you know? I'm like, wow, is there a problem with me? No, I'm just a man. We're just not built to be extremely nurturing. You know, we're different. We're not better. We're just different. And the quicker that we start to realize that there are differences between men and women, and when we try to switch those roles, especially how we're built hormonally, you are going to run into a lot of problems, which actually takes me to the point of fertility, especially because this is actually one of the things that is contributing to infertility, in my opinion. The cool thing is with these men, they did absolutely awesome. We had, I believe, with, I think 18 men finished, and we had, I think, over 180 pounds lost, which is cool. It's not necessarily about weight loss, but man, like their wives are like, thank you for doing that. Like my husband's a different person. And we capped it off by having a dinner on Saturday night, if you saw that on our Instagram page and on my Facebook page, Dr. Nathan Thompson. And so we had an awesome dinner and enjoyed some old fashions. They did get to eat some potatoes, but we just had an awesome time of just bonding, together. And it was really, really awesome. I look forward to being able to do this, obviously, again. A lot of people ask when we're doing it again. We'll see. Maybe in January we'll be able to do it. But it really is awesome. And I told the men, just like I tell a lot of people, congratulations. You lived a lifestyle on how you actually should live your whole life for 4 weeks. Now, what actually needs to happen is, are you willing to continue doing that for the next 4 years, or for the next 40 years for that matter? So many people have such high expectations of changing their lifestyle over the course of 6 months or 6 weeks, 6 months for that matter. Heck, I even noticed changes in myself, even doing things for 10 or 12 years. So you guys got to understand, what took 20 years to destroy inside your body isn't going to be radically transformed in 4 weeks, although you'll see some pretty awesome changes. So, speaking of which, somebody asked me the other day, they said, hey, what is your most difficult case that you see? What is your most difficult case? And I think that they were expecting, is it cancer? Is it autoimmunity? Is it thyroid issues? Is it digestive issues? Like, what is the most difficult case? Because I get messaged a lot. Do you treat X, Y, and Z? And guys, I will actually tell you that we don't necessarily treat the illness. That's medicine's job. They treat the illness. But what we do is identify where there are holes with health and remove stressors and take it out of the bucket, because the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism that needs no help, just needs no interference. And so what we're really good at is identifying where the stressors are, removing them, supporting the body. The body's responsible for healing. I'm not responsible for your healing. And so everybody asks me, do you treat this? Do you treat that? Do you treat that? And I tell them, no, I don't. I'll teach you how to take care of yourself. I'll teach you how to heal, but it's going to be 100% your responsibility. So when they ask me, what is your most difficult type of case? Here is my answer. It's not a case, it's a type of person. And the type of person that is that's the toughest for them to come around. It's the toughest for them to actually achieve healing. And you may be someone who's like this, that is watching, and it is actually the person who needs to be in control. Okay? Let me say that again. It's the person who needs to be in control. And many times the toughest people to help them to realize a different perspective are the people where actually medicine has failed, and they've gone down the rabbit hole of quote unquote natural health, and they have all of these ideas, that so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this. And so I'm just so confused now. Guys, every time that I talk, it's going to come from from basic physiology, as well. So I don't want you to follow me. What I want you to do is understand concepts and ideas. So who is the hardest person to help? is the person who feels like they have to be in control, which in and of itself is a major stressor. And I think the reason why they have such a hard time healing is because it's the idea of always being in control. So I actually know that if I see someone who's taking a lot of notes versus just listening, then they have a need to be in control, okay? I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but this is a sign at an auto mechanic. How much do you charge? $65 per hour, $85 if you touched it, $95 if you want to watch, and $120 per hour if you try to offer me advice. This is so true. I said, hey, just what I want you to do is here's what you need to do. Let's get to work. And so many times people are like, but I need to understand, and I need to know the ins and outs about all of these different things. And the reality is you don't need to know necessarily all the ins and outs of how. You need to know the big idea, and then you need to know that I can help you. Okay, you can start learning this all along, but so many people, they need to line up all of their ducks in a row before they decide to actually execute. And this is why so many people are still lining their ducks up in a row after 6 or 8 months, because they're looking for the perfect time and they need to know everything about everything before they're going to do something about it. And actually the people who get the best clinical results, they say, this is what's wrong, I'm going to do it. Just tell me, I need to jump, how high, and I'm going to do it. And so the biggest thing that I will say is guys, if you are a person who needs to be in control, this is coming from someone who is an absolute control freak in business, control freak at home, control freak with everything. And I just learned to let it go, because it causes an extraordinary amount of stress. And one of the things I want to let you know is that, especially from a woman's perspective, stress interferes with fertility. And I'm going to be showing you down the road of what a stress response actually does when it comes to a woman's fertility. So guys, I got to just keep telling you this, is please let it go. In fact, if you look at people who have struggled with fertility, and the biggest thing that they say is we didn't get pregnant until we just decided to let it go and to quit obsessing about it, especially. So are you a control freak? If you are, let me know. Just like I was, or I'm actually working on it every single day. But guys, if you're a control freak, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to regain your health, especially, okay? Now, let's talk about some ideas about fertility, because this will set us up when we talk about fertility from a male perspective, fertility from a female perspective. And so one of the things that we have to talk about, guys, and again, please share this if you know someone who's struggling with fertility, okay? Share it to your timeline. Sometimes it's kind of a private type of thing, or just private, send this via a private message. But the biggest thing they need to know is that there is hope. The other thing is that they need to put in some work in order to regain their health. I'll explain to you why in just a second. Now, this is the fertility rate in the United States from 1800 to 2020, okay? The average fertility rate in 1800 was 7, so 7 kids. And then you actually see now where our fertility rate is actually the lowest that it's been, that the average couple is actually now under 2 persons. So the reality is when you look at it, you're not even replacing yourself. It actually means that the population is in decline. I would hedge my bets to say that there are some people who actually would applaud that, because they have no interest in actually people having kids. They want people to have less kids. They want people to be perpetually sick, and you know exactly who I am talking about. But when you look at now that the fertility rate is at its all-time lowest, and I know what a lot of people are going to say, is they're going to say, oh, well, that back then there was a higher infant mortality rate. Yes, there was, no doubt about it. We have improved sanitation. We have improved nutrition and things like that since 1800. There's a lot more childhood deaths before age 1. People needed kids to work on the farm, and to help out. So yes, I get that. Yes, I understand that. But when you look at from 1960 to 2020, there's some other issues too. One of the issues is the idea of women working full-time jobs, women needing to work outside of the house for a secondary income. That's also going to play a role in it as well. but no one can deny the fact that men and women, that couples are having more issues with fertility than ever before. And you are seeing this, especially since 1960, and seeing that go down, is that people are suffering with either conceiving or carrying a pregnancy to full term, okay? So, is infertility a problem? Well, I went to the CDC, which they're not right, especially on a lot of things, but even the CDC says that yes, fertility is a common problem. So they say yes in the United States, among heterosexual women aged 15 to 49 years with no prior births, about 1 in 5, about 20%, are unable to get pregnant after 1 year of trying, okay? Also, out of that 20%, about 1 in 4 of them in this group have difficulty getting pregnant or carrying a pregnancy to term, okay? So actually, I misspoke. 20% are having a hard time with fertility, but then about 26% total are not only having a problem with getting pregnant, but they're then also having a problem with being able to carry a pregnancy to term, in which they are having miscarriages. And now you have to talk about, okay, what's happening with progesterone levels, what's happening with maybe some uterine inflammation, large amounts of natural killer cells that are causing some issues, especially before the second trimester as well. So when you look at this, 20% of women are having problems with conceiving. Now, what's interesting too is that the CDC says it's not always a woman issue, it can actually be a man issue as well. So that's why when you talk about conception, many times a woman comes in and says, oh, this is the problem with conceiving, it must be my fault. And then you have the husband saying, nah, I'm good, everything is perfect. I have literally, sperm as strong as Thor. But I'm like, I don't think so. I think that you can contribute to it as well. So why don't we work on getting both of you as healthy as possible to give your best chances of actually conceiving. So the CDC says, yes, fertility is an issue. But let me say this. Here's maybe my first thing that will ruffle some feathers, okay? But this is just common sense. Infertility is not genetic. I want you to think about that. Infertility is not genetic. We want to blame genetics on everything. I remember, I think someone had said someone blamed a health condition on their great uncle's second cousin. And it was these health conditions, guys, are rarely genetic. I want you to think about it, because purely genetic issues are expressed basically from birth. So infertility is not genetic. If infertility was genetic, then you wouldn't be able to pass on those genes of infertility. So just think it through, all right? So infertility is not genetic. Now, are there some issues with maybe some anatomy when it comes to the uterus? Yes, there are some things that can make it a little bit more challenging, but I want you to know that infertility is not genetic. That should be amazing, unbelievable news, because that means that you have a say in your ability to be able to conceive and carry a baby. Now, Center for Disease Control, let's go back to this, and what do they actually say about infertility treatments? Well, they call it ART, assisted reproductive technology, okay? So one of the reasons why you know that infertility is a really, really big deal is because we have now a whole new industry of actually helping with people with infertility, okay? Now, and here is what they say, and these are some of the stats on it. So here's the first stat. They said that there were 330,000, almost 331,000 assisted reproductive technology cycles performed at almost 500 clinics in the United States during 2019, and resulting in 78,000 live births, okay? And almost 84,000 live-born infants, which means some of them were twins or triplets, okay? And when they look at this, its use has more than doubled over the past decade, okay? Approximately now 2% of all infants born in the United States every year are conceived using assisted reproductive technology. Now, just in the last 10 years, is that the need for assisted reproductive technology has more than doubled, okay? I can just see medicine's eyes just light up with dollar signs saying, oh my goodness, well, here's a brand new frontier and we can make billions of dollars actually from. But the reality is no one's asking the question, why are men and women having such a hard time being able to conceive? Why on earth is that? And in fact, when you look at the number of ART cycles in the United States, and this comes from 2009 to 2018, and you can see that it actually has doubled just in the last approximately 10 years. So you can see that the need for this is becoming more and more and more, and I actually wonder if it's becoming more and more and more, when are we going to get to the point where the only way to have a baby is to actually do some kind of embryo transfer, or some kind of, in vitro fertilization hormone manipulation, in order to trick the body into thinking that it's pregnant. Like, is that going to be the only way that we can actually start to have kids? Which is very disappointing, because the only people who are going to be doing that are the ones who can actually afford it. Okay, so the idea, when you look at the number of live births versus the number of ART cycles, is that I looked this up and they said it's 12 to 25,000 per cycle. Let me say that again, 12,000 to 25,000 per cycle. Now, depending on what they have to do, depends on the actual price, but you're looking at a minimum of $12,000 per assisted reproductive technology cycle. $12,000, and with a 75% failure rate. So what that means is that on average, it's going to take 4 cycles in order to produce a baby to be born full term. Now, you look at this, you're easily looking at between $50,000 and $100,000 that you're going to need in order to have a baby. Holy cow, that's a lot of money. Oh, but Dr. Nate, insurance is starting to pay for it. Let me say this, guys, with insurance. This is my opinion, but insurance is one of the biggest scams on the planet Earth, because when you really, truly, truly look in and see what insurance is paying for, they do not pay for as much as you think it is. And on top of that, they are actually going to the doctor and demanding that they take a massive, massive pay cut, which is actually one of the reasons why we actually got on a network with all insurance, because I said, listen, I need to make a living as well, and I can't make a living from an insurance company if you guys haven't given me a raise in 20 years, and in fact, you have cut what you're willing to pay by 25 to 30, and in some cases 50%. What that does for a doctor is you say, I have to see a whole heck of a lot more people, and the biggest complaint that people actually say is they say, the doctor just didn't give me enough time. Well, in defense of doctors, they can't give you enough time because they're not getting paid enough, and they have overhead and office and employees and everything to have to actually pay for. Which is why, if you cut out insurance, you will notice that everything will get a whole heck of a lot cheaper, which is why our labs typically run about 10% of what they would normally charge at a hospital. So I want you to think of this, even if your insurance is paying for it, guys, you're still paying for it at some point. There are no free lunches, but some people don't have this as an insurance coverage, which means every cycle they have to be paying $12,000 to $25,000 for every cycle, which means it's like, I got to save up $50,000 to hopefully be able to conceive a child. Now, I also tell people, I said, if you think that we're expensive, with our approach, try in vitro fertilization, or go ahead and look at your how much they charge, for you to have a C-section. Go ahead and look and see how much your open heart surgery actually you had to pay for. And I've seen some people come back with a cancer treatment bill of over $1 million. I've actually seen people who went and had spinal surgery and $50,000. And I'm like, well, insurance paid for it, but you know what? Even if you were just did in vitro and you had great insurance, our care probably would be a lot cheaper than even paying your copays and paying your deductibles. So this has, it doesn't have a great success rate, But the question is why does it have a 75% failure rate? So why the high failure rate when it comes to assisted reproductive technology, or for example, in vitro fertilization, okay? And I want you to think of this. I talked about genetics. And I said, hey, it's not genetic, but you know what? Your genes can be involved. And it's not that you were born with bad genes, it's that your genes have changed, okay? It's that your genes have changed. This is why when people say, oh my gosh, I have an MTHFR gene mutation, or I have a COMT gene mutation. No, your genes changed in response to something that triggered it environmentally, okay? Now, epigenetics means genes are actually responding to a person's environment. You put your body in a bad environment and the genetic expression starts to change. That makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to saying, oh, I just got a bad gene and I'm just going to pass it on. And if you think about it, if something was damaging the genes and you pass down the damaged genes, we would all cease to exist after probably 4 or 5 generations. So remember, genes can change to the environment, but genes can also heal. This is why I love astragalus, because it's healing genes. It's actually protecting the genes. You actually have enzymes within your cells that anytime there's oxidative damage that can go in and repair the genes back to normal. And so this is why if you want to change your genetic expression, then you need to put yourself into a better environment. So infertility. So why do people have a high failure rate when it comes to fertility treatments? I want you to think of this. Your body is genetically programmed to reproduce. And if it can't reproduce, obviously there is a problem with sickness. And so it's why I always tell people is don't be bragging that you don't have a normal menstrual cycle. You know, don't be bragging about that, because it actually, your body is saying, I'm sick. I am sick. In fact, one of the things that you can see as your health starts to improve is going back to having a normal menstrual cycle as well. So why is there such a failure rate with ART? Well, because the reason why there's infertility is because you're sick. And so why would then trying to manipulate your hormones and trying to do all of these different things, then you're trying to manipulate hormones and then try to grow an egg, a fertilized egg, in an already sick body, if that makes sense, okay? So here is what I usually say. This may be something that may not be received well, but just think of this, is you can't put a bun in the oven if the oven isn't working, okay? You can't put a bun in the oven and you can't get, electric or gas into the oven. So you said, let's put a bun in the oven and then let's just go ahead and put a blowtorch in there and hopefully maybe it will cook right or it will heat it up. So think of this. There's a reason why infertility is taking place. And so it means I'm having a problem. Something has gotten sick, something's got inflamed, something is damaged, or maybe it's something that I actually interfered with certain hormones and endocrine disruptors. And you have to figure out why. Your body is saying this. This is what I want you to remember. Not right now. Maybe your body is saying, not right now. Now is not a good time. So what do you have to do instead? If your body is saying, not right now, how do you get your body to say, now is the perfect time? And this is why coming up, I'm going to get into fertility from a man's perspective, from a woman's perspective, and to actually do the right work in which your body says, now I am healthy enough to be able to carry this future life. Now I'm healthy enough to carry this future life. And even for people who say, you know what, I'm going to do it, we're going to do assisted reproductive technology, I'm going to say, well then give yourself the best chance to carry that baby. You still need to actually get your health back to give the baby the best chance to be able to survive for, as long as possible, to be able to survive, to be able to go full term. So no matter if you're doing assisted reproductive technology or you're trying to get pregnant naturally, it comes down to get your oven to start working. How do you get it working? Is start to reconnect the electric, start to reconnect the gas. In other words, get your health back, which means inflammation, probably issues with hormone metabolism, with the liver, the need to detox, the need to lower your stressors. We even talk about progesterone and stress and how that is so important. We'll talk about the problems with birth control, endocrine disruptors, what that does. We'll also talk about, as well, is different types of birth control in regards to IUDs, copper, how that causes actually, uterine inflammation, which is actually one of the reasons why natural killer cells, you see a high natural killer cells, and you'll also see why they might be able to conceive but then miscarry anywhere from 9 to 12, 13 weeks. And we'll talk about all those things, but next week I'll talk specifically about men because it is a men issue. But the other thing is too, guys, is that a man's health status when they conceive will largely determine a baby's health status when they are born, which is also why you better men get your health in order before you even try to conceive, which is what I've talked about in the past, is that men taking metformin, they actually will see very, very poor sperm motility, but they'll also see damaged genetics that they're passing on to the newborn. So this is why that you need to have a great health status when you are trying to conceive, because it's those genes that you're passing on to your baby. Hopefully, guys, that makes a lot of sense. And just remember, guys, tomorrow night, I can't wait for this. It's our approach to inflammation, and we do it every, I think, 3 weeks. Tomorrow night is the night, 6:15 p.m. at Exemplify Health Center. This is an in-person event. I actually saw more people are registering, those last-minute people I know, getting registered for it tonight. But make sure that you get registered for tonight, no later than tomorrow morning. If for some reason you can't register at the top of this page, please call our office and we'll see if we can get you in, if we still have room available for the approach to inflammation. So guys, it doesn't matter unless it's weight loss, cancer, infertility, thyroid issues, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, hormone issues. The first step is being able to know what inflammation is, to know what your triggers are, and to lower overall the inflammatory response inside the body. That is the first step before you even try to rebuild anything, is you have to know what those inflammatory triggers are and start to work on them. And that's the first step to the approach. And this right here is a revolutionary idea that I guarantee most people have never ever heard of at all. And every day we see people who are able to get off of medications. Every day we see people lose massive amounts of weight. Every day we see miracles take place. But just remember, if you see a miracle in your life, then the most important thing is to continue doing it, to continue living out that miracle, not for 4 weeks, not for 6 weeks, not for 6 months, but for the rest of your life, which is why we treat each individual person as an individual case. There are no protocols. There are no, what do you need to take? Because I get messaged all the time. People, what would you recommend for this? I've never seen your labs. I've never seen any, all those things. I can't give you a recommendation unless I know who you are, what you're suffering with, and be able to look at your labs. And this is why this approach helps us to take an individual approach for every person, because every person is different, every person is unique, every person is a fingerprint. And that's why we are going to treat you when you come into our office. So guys, if you're from the Chicagoland area, get registered for that. Coming up tomorrow at 6:15 p.m. on Tuesday. Can't wait to see you guys at that event. So next week, we're going to talk about fertility part 2. What about men? It's going to be a little bit shorter than it is about women. But also, if you're talking about issues with fertility, that even men, if you say, well, I don't need to be worried about that because, I'm past that age, I'm actually going to be talking about some things that are very devastating to your testosterone and very devastating to your health and your genetics that can lead to heart disease and cancer and things like that. So I'm going to talk about fertility from a man's perspective coming up next week, next Monday, but probably Wednesday I will join you on another live, in regards to health news and things like that. So guys, I always appreciate the shares. I always appreciate the kind words. I appreciate the comments. Even the not so kind words, I actually appreciate those. I always tell, if you disagree, let me know why you disagree. Just don't just shoot the messenger or just don't attack the messenger. Let me know why you disagree. Let's have a discussion. So guys, I hope you be well. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of your week. This is Dr. Nathan Thompson again, signing off with Exemplify Health Center. Be well, be blessed. Remember who you are.